The last part of the mound builder phase is the period that's referred to as Mississippian. This is a time frame roughly 750 CE to contact, which means that the traditions lingered to the time when Europeans arrived in the New World. It is a continuous tradition coming out of Edina and Hopewell, but it is going to morph. It's going to change. It's going to become more complex, in particular in reference to the rulers, the chiefdoms, the way in which expressions are presented about the power of authority, and almost certainly the divine nature of the ruler. Consequently, we're going to have more elaborate sites and more elaborate ceremonies, which are going to be required to kind of shore up and back up the position, usually considered inherited, divinely inherited position of the ruler. This is referred to as the Southeastern Ceremonial Complex, and that references shared iconography. In other words, a shared set of symbols and ideas and beliefs or cosmology that is consistent throughout the region in this period. It does deal with sun worship, with elevating the importance of the sun and the relationship between the sun and earthly rulers. This should be suggesting to you that there might be some contact with Mesoamerica, and we do have enough coincidences that we can believe that there was connection and probably borrowing, exchange of some ideas between North America and Mesoamerica that show up in this period. The idea of the importance of the sun and the divine nature of the ruler being justified through connection with the sun would be one of those. This is going to be a kind of village-based life. The folks are going to be agriculturalists, and their main crops are going to be corn, squash, pumpkins, beans, and tobacco. They're also going to leave behind effigy mounds as well as platform mounds, and the platform mound is going to take on an increased importance in this period. They're the flat top ones, and they're going to be placed near community centers or plazas, and that too is going to echo the pattern that appears in Mesoamerica. In addition to those, we are also going to see conical mounds continue, and those are going to be the ones primarily used for burial. The two maps that I have on the screen will give you a little bit of a sense of the geography. The one in the upper right gives us the small section of the Edina, and then the larger section of the Edina-Hopewell complex that we looked at. And you can easily see that both of those run into Pennsylvania as well as into upstate New York, which is where I am from. The map on the left, which is Mississippian, shows us that the complex is going to now move a little bit to the south and to the west, so it's no longer going to immediately overlap with our geographic region. This map might help us to see that a little bit better. We're just almost touching the border of Pennsylvania, but we're not overlapping the space of Pennsylvania. There are going to be a number of pretty big complexes that are a part of Mississippian. The two that I think worth noting would be Spiro, located in Oklahoma, and that would be right in here. That is a ceremonial center, and it had a lot of very important rich burials, some of which have been excavated. The other is Cahokia. We are going to look at that. It's located right up here. That's rather different. It is located in Illinois, and it's an urban center, a metropolis with incredibly big ritual monuments and not many burials. It might be best to think about it as a city, parallel in many ways to the cities that we have today. In the Mississippian period, we get more stratified societies in general with ruling elites. They are going to use art as well as architecture to reinforce their authority. In addition to that, we're going to get elevation and importance of warfare and warriors. It's going to be, in fact, a diagnostic feature of Mississippian, and we're going to have some defensive architecture as well. The folks of the Mississippian period are going to continue the three-tiered worldview, and they're going to leave behind some really, I'm going to say, complex symbolic images that help to display those worldviews. In this period of intensive mound building, we do get some of the most interesting and enigmatic mounds as well. There are a series of effigy mounds that can be found in the northern portion of the Mississippian region. And we're looking at an overview of just some of the shapes that were created on the land. We're truly talking about land art now. The prime real estate for this would be in Iowa and Wisconsin, and basically that region. And I'd like to show you just a couple of these because they're really pretty amazing, and they should remind you of the Nazca lines. This is an overview, an aerial of just some of the Iowa effigy mounds. There were approximately 20,000 of these mounds that were originally created. Of those 20,000, 400 survive, and of the 400, 206 of these mounds have been preserved. Okay, what does that mean? It means that the government has the control and protection of these monuments, or a similar agency. That means that the rest of the 400 would be under the control of individuals who own the property, and the mounds happen to be on that property, so that it would be conceivable that those mounds, even in the 21st century, are still up for possible destruction. The folks are in the region are attempting to protect these, to bring more of them into the fold so that they can be preserved for the future. Among them, and among the most famous of these, are the marching bears. And that's what we're looking at right here. These guys, all of them going in a kind of row. They're going along a ridge above a river. So I'm going to say a kind of natural pathway. And I wish I could tell you exactly what their purpose was, but we aren't sure. It's been suggested that they're clan animals and that they represent a claim to the land, and perhaps more important than the land itself, the resources that are associated with that land. The biggest of the bears is 137 feet in length. So I'm going to make the argument we have a pretty big bear. These images are only visible from the air, and they were not used for burials, so they had a different kind of purpose. We do suspect that they are related to animals that are associated with clans and maybe are being used as markers. There are also some of these that are actually dug in. They're intaglio. They were actually dug into the earth. Many of those have been lost because the impressions have been filled. And it's increasingly difficult to find them, locate them, and to save them. There's one last comment about these that maybe in the future we can determine to be true, and that is it does seem that some of these are associated with astronomical alignments. That our bears, for example, seem to march toward the North Star, Polaris, in the springtime, and that might be associated with ideas of hibernation, which is also associated with the behavior of bears. I can't tell you if that's true, but it's a possibility. And again, a pretty good example of the way in which Native Americans lived in, I'm going to say, more harmony with nature than we do today, and a greater familiarity with nature than we do today. If you look at my detail over here, you're going to see what these might look like, some of the mounds on the ground at ground level. Today they are covered with grass. I can't tell you that they would have been in the time that the Native Americans produced them, but as you can see, they are big enough that it would only be visible from the air, and in that sense they have something in common with the Nazca lines.